Hey everybody, Andrew here, and I just wanted to check in real quick to see how everybody was doing for 2022. It's a new year, and I hope that there's a lot of different things and stuff that you're really excited for with your projects and everything. And quite honestly, I would love to hear about it. So if you have a moment, go on Twitter. You can reach out at us at IGM Podcast, or even me if you would like at underscore Andrew Pappas. There's Mustafa you can reach out to, or Rengen Marketing to, any number of channels. But we really just want to know how you guys are kicking off the new year and what your projects are like and what's going on. Seriously, it doesn't have to be anything in depth. Just let us know what's going on. We just like to see that through a new year that you're, taking action with what you're doing. So would love to see all that activity going on from our listeners. Speaking of activity, I've been doing a lot of stuff kind of like behind the scenes with my company and everything, and just honestly creating a lot more helpful content. So if that's something that's interests you outside of the podcast, feel free to go to rengenmarketing.com and sign up for the email list that I have there. I'm producing weekly content. It's really helpful stuff. I think there's a lot that you can get out of it. So if you want to get a little bit more than what you're just getting out of the show here at Indie Game Movement, by all means, go to rengenmarketing.com and sign up for that email list to get a lot of helpful tips, resources, and information that can help you with your marketing and business needs for indie games. So, guys, thanks so much for being such great listeners, and that's all I have to share, so let's get to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 265, where we're going to be talking about how to create impactful trailers. Now, out of all the content game devs create for their marketing, making a trailer is one of the best ways to tell a story and communicate their game. While effective, making trailers can be challenging, especially when finding ways to create impact for players. Luckily, we're discussing this with Derek Lieu, an industry game trailer veteran, about his experiences on how game trailers can not only set expectations, but resonate and create impact for players. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. And like I mentioned before, I have the great, amazing guest with me here today, Derek Lieu. Derek, how's it going, buddy? And thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm doing well.
Great to hear. Now, Derek, I know I gave a brief intro, prior to us talking right now, but I wanted you to take the time to introduce yourself, what exactly it is that you do, and then take a moment too, and please share a little bit more about your personal life in terms of like hobbies or things that you do outside of work.
Sure. So my name is Derek Lieu. I make video game trailers. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, but I've been editing video for like 18 years. If you count college years, and add another 4. I make primarily indie game trailers, but I've worked on a lot of bigger titles too. I've worked on Half-Life Alyx, about as big as it gets. I did a story trailer for Psychonauts 2. All of last year, I'm pretty sure I did the trailers for Among Us, which is a blast. I also worked on Firewatch, Spelunky 2, The Long Dark, Subnautica, Dead Cells, Ooblets, Noita. I've worked on a lot, and I've been very, very, very fortunate to just work on so many amazing games that, frankly, I just wanted to play anyway. So I got to blend work and pleasure quite nicely that way.
Sweet.
I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, but right now I'm in New Jersey. I lived in Los Angeles / San Diego for about 7 years or so. But before then, I was in New York for quite a while. I went to NYU Film School, so Tisch School of the Arts. As an assistant, after college, I worked as an assistant at a movie trailer company in New York called Geronimo Productions. They did all the trailers for the original Matrix trilogy, the original Pirates of the Caribbean, Spider-Man. They've worked on many, many things since then, but I just mostly remember what was going on when I was there. And yeah, so then I've been doing game trailers for, like I said, about 8 years independently. I also worked at a place called Hammer Creative in Los Angeles that works on AAA games. So I got to work on Mortal Kombat X and a lot of Lego games. Um, and fun fact, if you get the Mortal Kombat X Jason Friday the 13th DLC, you know that sound from Friday the 13th where you're like, shh, shh, shh. I made that sound for the trailer, and they hadn't made that sound yet for the game yet.
What?
So they said, can you just ship that over to us? I'm like, what? Don't you have like people with years of sound design experience, not someone like with a Blue Yeti microphone finding an empty room to record this? And they're like, it's like, just send it over. I'm like, okay. So that's in the game now, which is pretty wild. As far as personal life, well, during the pandemic, I haven't been as active in my hobbies as I used to. I have on my website that I'm a dedicated martial artist. At this point, I would say I'm a lapsed martial artist with dreams of practicing more. Because when I was in Los Angeles, I practiced about 3 times a week, if not more. I took a Chinese Kung Fu from a school in New York for about 5 years, starting when I was like 25. And that basically changed my life. And I also took a year of Russian Sistema, which is a Russian martial art. I took up a year of that in Los Angeles shortly before I left. So Kung Fu movies and Kung Fu was really high on my list. I love my cats. I love cooking. I like movies, of course. And that's a lot of it.
That's awesome. And again, thank you for sharing what it is you do, your experience, but also that in addition to that, everything else that you do on the side. And hopefully things kind of like loosen up with like restrictions and the pandemic where you can go back out to just being that awesome Kung Fu master that you are destined to be.
I mean, really what I just need to do is just go to my behind my house into my driveway and just practice, which is a little harder now that it's not 80 degrees all the time every day.
Right?
Because I'm on New Jersey now. So I just need to bundle up or get a mat to jump rope on for indoors or something. Because I was taking classes at that school, but a lot of it, I just blame myself.
Well, I hope you somehow, somewhere, you get a little bit of that extra initiative. And I know what it's like. I'm on the East Coast, too, with you in terms of the weather. So, but I believe in you, man. I know you can make that push and get there.
Thank you.
But so to continue on, though, I would love for you to go into the Q Box round to get to know a little bit other random things about you.
Sure.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, the Q Box round is simply just a series of random questions I prepared for Derek here. So, Derek, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Pineapple or kiwi?
Pineapple.
Oh, if you could only watch one trailer for an entire day, what would it be?
Okay, I listed 2 here, but the first one will probably be the one for the one trailer.
Okay.
And that's the trailer for The Matrix Reloaded. That's
Sweet.
One of my top favorite trailers of all time. But second place goes to the trailer for The Thin Red Line. It's an amazing trailer. There's 2 out there. The first one I remember seeing in theaters was just totally wrong. Is like, war movie. Which if you've seen The Thin Red Line, Terrence Malick films, like, no, not. It's just decidedly not like, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan or something like that. But the Thin Red Line trailer is phenomenal. And Matrix Reloaded, I think that was being finished up around when I was an assistant at Geronimo. But my friend Phil DeCord, who was the senior editor at Geronimo at the time, he edited all the Matrix trailers. And that's just an amazing trailer. I can watch it forever.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to have to definitely check those out too. Because, I mean, there's definitely some good trailers out there, and there's some okay ones. But if that's one of your recommended best, it sounds like it's definitely worth checking it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In the line of movies here, what's your favorite movie of all time?
Okay. I have 2 again, but I have My Neighbor Totoro.
I have yet to see
film.
that. I feel
oh my God.
ashamed for admitting that, but that's one of the Miyazaki films I have not seen.
You should see it, of course, and especially if you have kids, obviously you should see it. But my second is High and Low. It's a Kurosawa film. Not one of his more talked about films. It's based off of I think a Western novel, actually. Like it's like a mystery detective sort of thing, and it has some of the most amazing composition and blocking in any film I've ever seen ever. And that's saying for a Kurosawa film. So you already know the composition's good.
Right.
But
Exactly.
just one small example is that most of the first half of the film takes place in one room, and it's basically like a play. And they filmed 10-minute takes, I think, because that's as long as a film reel can support.
Oh, so similar to Hitchcock's I can't think of
Rope.
it. Yes, it was Rope. Yep.
Kind of, but it's not really like gimmicky that way.
Good. Yeah, I would
But
think
like,
that.
and like basically there may be like 5 to 7 characters on screen at any given time, and they're always perfectly composed based off of what's happening in the scene, and it's mind blowing. So
I need to
watch High and Low. Oh my god.
Sweet. Oh, you got me all excited because I haven't seen a lot of Kurosawa movies in a while, so I'm long overdue, and that sounds like a good one.
That one, like, it might sound intense or something because it's like detective, but I can watch it whenever.
Yeah. Oh, and okay. Well, I love that you made that suggestion because that's not one I'm familiar with either. So, but I love Kurosawa. What's your biggest gaming pet peeve?
Inconsiderate gamers.
That's a good one. And it's so sad that there's so many
gamers.
of them, it seems. I mean, you know what? It might not so much be that there's so many. They just probably stand out more than the considerate gamers.
Yeah. And I understand respect is earned to a degree, but I think there's a certain baseline level of respect you should give other human beings. And I don't think that always pans out. So I don't like that.
Yep. Don't blame you there. And the staple here on the show, what game are you playing right now?
So I just finished Astrobot's Playroom, I think, the one that comes with PS5. And before that, I was playing Nuclear Blaze, which is a new pixel platforming firefighting game from the creator of Dead Cells. He made it for his kid because his kid wanted to play a firefighter. So there's a kid mode where it's like very, very easy to play. Like there's no jump button even. It's a pretty short game. It's really cute. You get to save cats because they're the secret collectible item. There's like a cat in almost every level. And he was very nice to give me a special thanks in those credits, even though I didn't do anything on the game. He just, I think from my trailer tips, he, I guess, used them to make his trailer, which was very good. So that was a really nice surprise.
Yeah. And what, I mean, that's great that he even gave you that special thanks too. And it shows kind of a lot of what you're doing for the community and everything. But on top of that, with the game he made, what could be wrong? Like, what could be more amazing than like saving a bunch of cats or collecting?
I know, right? It's a non-violent game. You save cats. You're just putting out fires. There's a bit of a mystery behind it. It's pretty short and sweet, and it has really good game feel. It's very nice.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for going through the Q Box round. And now we're going to dive right into the topic here for discussion, which is how to create impactful trailers.
Mm-hmm.
So to kick it off, I would love for you to kind of define what creating impact means in terms of, game trailers.
Sure. I'd say an impactful game trailer is one that, first of all, gets people excited. You want people to be excited or interested. You want people to finish watching the trailer.
Yep.
And you really want people to not only remember what they saw, get excited about what they saw, but then share it. Because, if you have a trailer that a person sees like, okay, and then sort of dies there, then that will have far fewer opportunities to have any impact at all. But and that's not always on the trailer's fault. It could just be, the way it was released, because certainly trailers that are part of big events will get more eyes. But even those, like during like the Game Awards or something like that, how many trailers do you remember from the most recent Game Awards? Probably not that many. First of all, there's so many. But if there's one that cut through somehow, it wasn't necessarily like the most anticipated game of all time, like, I don't know, Hellblade 2 or something, then I would say that made a good impact, whether it's because of the trailer, the design of the game, or both. But just having that staying power, that sort of not earworm, but like, that indelibility, that it sears into your brain. I'm mixing metaphors here, but being memorable and people liking it and wanting to share it and getting excited and wish listing it, joining Discord, whatever. if it prompts people to action, then that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that closing point there. Prompts people to action too, because I think basically it's an encompass everything you just shared right there. Like, remembering, sharing, getting excited about it. And it's funny, as you were talking about that too, in providing some examples, I'm like, maybe in an indirect way, you could kind of think about it as, for those of you, at least in the US, are familiar with like the Super Bowl commercials, like which ones stand out.
Sure.
And unfortunately, though, I feel like over the past few years, all of them have been going downhill. But I remember like growing up and it's like, oh, remember that Super Bowl? And you start talking to all your friends about it. Like,
yeah,
that's probably another good analogy in terms of like creating impact, or at least one that just popped in my head as you were saying that. Because
like the Budweiser frogs.
Yeah, the frogs. Like, oh, and was it them too that did the cat herding? I'm like,
oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, all right. You have to look up cat herding.
What was the advertising? There was the Was Up guys. That was like early 2000s.
Was that 7-Up?
Something like that.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Or it could be another Bud one, but
it's probably just Budweiser.
Like, they usually do a pretty good job, Dominic. But to the point, like, hey, look, we're talking about these Super Bowl commercials from like forever ago, but that's the type of like impact and probably the residual like appeal that like something like that can have. Now, obviously, that can be a challenge, but the point is like go for that, and that's many examples, and plus the ones that you provided in terms of how you would kind of define creating impact. So
I would also say if people can see a game trailer and understand like what the game is, they can see themselves playing it, because like, oh, I can see that the player in this shot is doing XYZ. I understand how this game works. Because there's a lot of game trailers like, wait, how do I fit into this game? Is this even a game? This is a cutscene here. Is this a cutscene? Am I playing? But if they can connect those dots and be like, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I do want to press those buttons to do that thing. Then that's also really successful, I would say.
And I'm glad you said that too, because that's a great segue into the other area that I want to talk about, which is basically, hey, we talked about what can make impactful things, but while you're doing that, how can you also set expectations? So, you mentioned a couple right there, but what are some other ways that game trailers can actually help set expectations and clearly communicate the games for players?
Yeah, that one's really difficult, especially once you get bigger budget, because there's games like Watch Dogs or Cyberpunk, or games which trailers came out 3 years before the game came out, and the devs were like, we think this will ship. We think we can fit this many visual effects into the game. But, they find out that they couldn't by the end for myriad reasons, usually production time and money, usually money. But the way to set expectations, first of all, if you can make your trailer when you have a really solid design or like really good vertical slice, so then that okay, this is what the game is going to be. So then that you're just showing that, and then hopefully down the line it just looks better. Like not many AAA game companies especially have this happen, but I know Naughty Dog has had this before, where you watch like the original Uncharted 2 trailer and then Uncharted 2 like launch trailer, and it looks way better because I guess they scoped correctly and they just improved the visuals by then. Other ways to clearly like set expectations. I mean, it's really tough because what sounds to you like, oh, this is a reasonable amount of stuff that I think we can ship in the game, might not be reasonable later on for some other reason. But I think really focusing on the core like game mechanic, which isn't necessarily, say, tied to graphics or something, or maybe make your graphics, don't, I'm not going to say like make your graphics look worse, but it also depends on the game. Sorry, this is a little rambling, because like indie games, for example, don't get as much blowback if their graphics don't look like they do in the trailers the same way AAA do, because indies usually aren't like pixel pushing. They're not worrying about like RTX and DLSS, which I don't even know what it is, but I know those are things that PC gamers, like hardcore PC gamers, care about. I guess that's the other thing, is that if you don't sell your game on the graphics, like this is the thing about the game that makes it good, then I think that people have less ground to think about the graphics in that way. Like, oh, you sold the game based off the graphics and the graphics didn't turn out what you wanted. Then I'm going to be angry at that. Whereas if you say like, well, in the game, you have this axe that calls back when you press this button, and that's cool. Then if it's all about the axe and the gameplay around that, then yeah, the God of War I'm talking about here, they delivered on that. So I don't know, maybe it's like, know the things that you have most control over, which in games, games is such a weird thing based off my little bit of knowledge. But know the things you have control over, the things that you scoped well, I guess, and then focus on those things. And hopefully those things are the hook of your game rather than just like the side content or, something that's very similar to another game.
Yeah, no, those are really good points, because I know, or understand at least, that when people are creating trailers, there can be a lot of components that they really want to share and they're excited about, and they think that might have just natural appeal. But to your point, I mean, you're talking about like a lot of things like, basically it's not, what I gathered was you could break it down into two elements, right? And you're kind of comparing indies and AAA to some respect. So you have the visual aspects, and then you have the mechanical aspects, or the game mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And then and what you said here, which I absolutely love, or I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but it's like, what are your game strengths, and how are you showcasing them in the trailers? Because like you said, with the core mechanics and stuff, that it does can really help set those expectations. If I'm paraphrasing and summarizing all that correctly.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, games have a real long history of being thought of as products, like, the latest iPhone or something like that, where it's like, oh, it's faster, it's better. And I think that if you focus your trailer more about the experience and the feelings, then you sort of give yourself more wiggle room. Because if you say, hey, my latest game comes with 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second or ultra wide, and you can't ship that, then that is objectively something your game does not have. But if you say, hey, my game makes you feel like a Greek god caught in a battle with Norse gods or something like that, or it makes you feel powerful, or this makes you feel like a cool explorer, then that has more wiggle room than how many sprites that it has or something like that.
Yeah, that's an amazing point, and a good segue into my other question too. But still, I just want to go off on that a little bit, just emphasize like experience. But like, what's the gameplay experience, or what are the feelings that are created? Because feelings and everything that your game has, and if you can show that in your trailer, it's going to probably resonate with the people who are watching that more. And with that in mind, I would also think that, and this is my next question, is how important would you say it is for devs to clearly identify their audience before making their trailer? Because understanding them to a degree of like what kind of feelings they might like playing your game could be really helpful in how they put together their trailer.
Yeah, I think knowing your audience and what they want, even if like you don't have a community, presumably you're making a game that has piggybacked off of the strengths of other games, because your game is not Pong or Space Invaders, presumably, unless you're a time traveler and you're listening to podcasts about making trailers. But if you try to please everyone, then you please no one, is the cliche.
Yep.
But there are so many analogies I think I have for like targeting your audience. Like, one is this one I've heard quote from Seth MacFarlane, where he'll make, it's Family Guy, if you like it or hate it. This is a pretty astute comment, I think, where he says that, or people ask him, why do you make these such obscure references in your cartoons? 0.3% of the population is going to understand this reference. And his response is basically, but I'll have that 0.3% of people, like, they'll be like my fans for life, because we connected through that one reference, and like I saw them, they saw me back, and that's like a real connection there. So that's when people feel seen through the trailer, then that makes a really huge impact. Like, let me think let me tell you some more examples. I did a trailer for Battle Block Theater, the Behemoth's third game. They did Castle Crashers, and I'd already done a bunch of trailers, and it was coming to Steam finally. So I thought to myself, like, because there have been so many trailers, you can't really just talk about the game by itself already. Like, that would just be repetitive. So I'm like, what if we just made this like jokey trailer, because we had this great narrator. What if we just made this trailer just riffing and poking at all the things that PC game players care about in games and graphics, like frame rate and, you know, hair textures or physics and stuff like that. And Battle Block Theater is a side-scrolling 2D hand-drawn platformer, so it does not have any of these things. There are no options for graphics in Battle Block Theater. So we made this trailer basically saying like, oh my God, this game has, you know, bajillion P graphics and 25,000 frames per millisecond. And, you know, it has Oculus support for 5 Oculuses. And part of me was thinking like, oh my God, they're going to hate us. They're going to be like, oh my God, you a-holes, what are you doing? But actually they loved it. We made fun of them. We called them out. And like, oh my God, this is the best trailer ever. I'm going to get this game. Like, oh my God, how did that happen? I mean, a big part of it was just the execution of the narrator. So I can't take too much credit, but, you know, because we were just speaking their language basically, and they enjoyed that. Another example, I did 1.0 launch trailer for Noita. So Noita have been early access for several years. And I made a trailer that just showed a lot of the trials and tribulations of playing Noita, which is like making new wands and then dying after you feel like you're a total god because your life is so fragile in that game. And there are a lot of comments from people who clearly already purchased the game. They're like, oh my God, that one moment at 58 seconds in, that's totally me, you know, and stuff like that. I'm like, yes, you know, when I see those comments, then I know that I've gotten through. So I think I have one more example, but I've forgotten it now, but it's very, very important, all to say.
Yeah. So thank you so much for providing those examples, because as you can see, everyone, or hear rather, all those different variations and ways that you can actually be pretty creative with connecting with your audience, and the more you know about them. For example, with the trailer he was mentioning about which game was it, with the 2D one where you were connecting with all the PC
yeah,
gamers?
the Battle Block Theater.
Thank you. I mean, with that one in particular, they're just purposely calling out and kind of being like silly with it or whatever in their own way, and that totally resonated with them because that community knew that, like, yep, we're like this, and wow, we really appreciate the fact that you acknowledge it in this fun, quirky little way. So there's lots of different ways you can connect with people, and that's why it's so important, as Derek clearly demonstrated, really understanding your audience, even when it comes to making trailers.
Yeah, and I'll read Steam forums, I'll read YouTube comments, especially if it's like a game that has similar like genre sensibilities to another game. Like, okay, what do people care about in here? You know, what do they dislike? What do they like? Got to make sure that some of those vibes are in there. And sometimes it's relatively easy. So I did a speed run trailer for Spelunky 2 because there was just some event, like it was a tournament or charity sort of thing, something. So I made this relatively quick trailer, no pun intended, it's for a speed run, where a big part of the trailer was just me dying and then very quickly pulling up the menu to restart my run, because I figured that would be very familiar to speedrunners, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get this really good run, and then, oh my God, it messed up, got to start over. And I got some nice comments in there saying, oh my God, Derek gets us so much, which they meant Derek Lieu, but I still took the sentiment well.
That's awesome. And again, just really great ways on how you can connect with people and really think of those ways. And one you mentioned too, I've actually used this myself with, and I think this is a concept that everybody should be able to use with anything with their marketing, is simply check out the reviews on games or even other games like yours, and what are the things that are standing out, because as you mentioned, that's a great kind of source for inspiration or even validation in terms of how you can like connect with those people, with those players. So awesome. Really good stuff there. Now I want to shift this focus a little bit and kind of like piggyback off of some of these ideas in terms of discussing ways to create impact with trailers. So obviously connecting with the audience is some, but let's say more of a executional standpoint, what would you say are some simple ways game trailers can create impact for players in terms of just creating a trailer?
Sure. Okay, so one thing is, if you think of it kind of like your trailer, kind of like a video tutorial, I think that can really help, because they're like, a well-designed game or a well-designed tutorial already has a certain sense of pacing to it. If you think about like Mario 1-1, it's like, okay, first you got to jump, then you got to jump over this thing. Now you got to jump over a bigger thing. Now you got to jump over a pit. And it like gradually gets more complicated, and kind of works that way for most games because you're trying to teach people how to play the game. And, you can't give them Bowser for their first encounter in Super Mario Brothers. And I think that there are a lot of games where if they took a linear capture of them playing the game, like, I don't know, first 2 hours of the game or something like that, and really just kept everything in order, and then put in the exciting bits and the bits that would help people understand what the game is, then that's a relatively, quote unquote, easy way to do that. And I think people get stuck in the mindset that like, oh, it's non-linear editing, you can do it in any order. I can make Pulp Fiction, I can do 2001 with the space station and the bones. Like, no, most editing is about like basic understanding, basic matching up of, if A, then B, if B, then C, if C, then D. And sometimes you throw things for a loop. For the most part, especially, most indie game devs probably don't do a lot of video editing, especially for trailers, because at least one game, I don't know, a year or a few months or multiple years. So it's already a lot to take in. So why try to be Pulp Fiction when you can just be just a linear narrative where if I jump here, then this happens. If I jump on this, then I get this power. If I get this power, then I can do this. And then the other tip I have, like really, really, like the really baseline outline, is to just think of your trailer in this order. First is the genre. Got to establish the genre, because people have very particular flavors in games. I like, I don't know, Metroidvania games, and I like third person cinematic games like Uncharted. I like, I don't like strategy games. I don't like builder games. I have very particular genre tastes, and most people are like that. They don't, most people are not game for anything. So they need to know what that genre is as soon as possible. And a lot of trailers play really coy with this because they want to start really cinematically and, have a slow build in. And meanwhile, everyone's already skipping ahead to find out what the gameplay is. So you might as well put the gameplay at the beginning. And sometimes you just need like one shot, like a fighting game. If one shot in a fighting game, people will get it. Okay, it's a fighting game, because you have two people, they're really large on the screen, they have power bars on the top. Once people know where they are, then either they keep watching because they like fighting games, or they stop because they don't like fighting games. But you've put out that thing for them that they needed to know, that base amount of knowledge. And after that, then the next question is, okay, now that I know it's a fighting game or something, what's different about this? So you establish the genre, and then after that, you have to talk about what the hook is, the twist on that thing. Could be a combination of things. And at the very end of the trailer, if you put it in the trailer at all, is when you should talk about content and features, in my opinion. And by what I mean by that is when you're saying 60 levels and 12 boss battles and 100 skins and stuff like that. A lot of trailers front load that, and especially in games, because again, thinking about themselves like a product. And I think they're worried that, or they don't realize that, bullet points are not the thing that sell the game. They're the thing that make people want to come back and keep playing, but they can't care about that until they know what the game is. So the analogy I use is ice cream shop. New ice cream shop opens in town, and you're like, well, I already got an ice cream place I like to go to. Why should I come to your place? Well, because our ice cream is made with like organic ingredients and made with liquid nitrogen. It's like, ooh, cool. And then you have some, you're like, oh, it's delicious. What else you got? What other flavors you got? And then they find you have all these flavors. So, but you don't want the ice cream shop to say first, hey, we have strawberry and chocolate and vanilla. I'm like, yeah, so does my place. What else you got? Like, oh, we got really nice chairs. That we just get to the point.
I absolutely love that analogy because, I mean, I would suspect most people, if not almost everyone, loves ice cream or likes it. But to your point, it's like everybody's going to have their own place that they always get to. And so what is going to separate that new place from your existing place? What are those differentiators? And not only that, because like I love the examples you provided. You said like a lot of times you find that people are thinking it like a product opposed to like an experience, and anyone can make a trailer probably in the same way like a product or whatever. But is that because an ice cream place, like your ice cream place and the new ice cream place, they both sell ice cream. But what is that experience going to be like? It's like, come on, like, what'd you say, liquid nitrogen? I mean,
yeah. There's a place in San Francisco. There are multiple places. And there's even subdivisions within that about how they use liquid nitrogen. But like the analogy I use also is that you're selling the first iPhone, not the 13th iPhone. And people think they're selling the 13th iPhone. And that's why they talk about features. Whereas the first one, Steve Jobs had to say, I mean, people are already excited for a phone made by Apple, but still he found a way to say, like, this is why you need this. This is how it would change your life, XYZ reasons. Because even though games stand on the shoulders of giants, they're all kind of unique in their own way. So it's still kind of like selling the first iPhone every single time to a certain degree. Because the iPhone came out after telephone had existed and cordless phones had existed and I don't know, Palm Pilots and stuff.
Yep.
So it's not that the iPhone came out completely out of the blue. So it's kind of same.
Yeah, no, another good ways to look at things in terms of, it's not necessarily a thing to get so crazy with the features or whatever. Yeah, they can be important information, but are they the most important information in making that call? Another thing I want to call out too that I think was great that you mentioned is thinking in terms of being linear with your trailer, because again, I think that goes back to what we were talking about before with setting player expectations. And also, I think being linear like that creates some really nice clarity for people. Again, aligning with expectations. One thing that was on my mind that still stands out to me to this day was the trailer for the game 140. That's basically just a 2D platformer, which you are a shape, and based off of the movements that you do, the core mechanics are identified very quickly, and you could tell that it's a very simple game, but just from that alone, and obviously other things that they incorporate into it, like pacing and then like the music and stuff, it was done in a linear fashion. I felt like when I was watching it that I was actually playing the game and I got all the information I needed, and I actually got excited to the point where I remember it still to this day. So, and I like using that example too. And it totally relates to what you just said, being very linear in fashion, because it was. And it was very simple. It was a simple game. And yet I thought that the trailer was basically did everything. It created impact.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to check that one out again. But I am familiar with the game. So that sort of game, which I remember, it's like very colorful and a lot of like flashing lights and stuff.
Yep.
And that's definitely one that clarity would have to be really top. I mean, for me, clarity is always top of the importance list or top priority. But that one especially, because I think a lot of the shapes and stuff like that, because they're simple shapes, they could blend together. So you might lose track of where the player is. And you don't want that, especially if you're going to try to make a fast cut trailer, because then you run into like Michael Bay action territory. Where like, wait, who's the good guy robot? Who's the bad guy? And which way am I facing? Is it up, down, left, right? But actually, for a really telling thing is to watch Michael Bay Transformers action films and then watch Bumblebee, which is not made by Michael Bay. And it's still, the designs aren't exactly the same, but it's still giant robots, doing like martial arts to each other, and the Bumblebee action scenes are great. They're really easy to understand, and I was so excited and almost like thrown for a loop. I was like, oh my god, I can see what they're doing, and it's amazing. We could have had this.
Yeah, Michael Bay does have the tendency to kind of go above and beyond. I mean, but that's Michael Bay, right?
Yeah, he has definitely a style, and he's very successful, but he's not really my bag necessarily. I do like The Rock.
Yeah, that is a good one. All right, cool. Well, in light of that too, and what we talked about, I'd love to kind of get into just real quick before we wrap. Lessons learned. So, and one question I have for that: in what ways do some game trailers attempt to resonate with their players, but may fall short on that delivery?
Sure. Again, I think usually the content of the features is the number one thing. Talking about how many levels and game modes and stuff like that. That's the number one thing. One that is just super, super tough is trying to speak the language of the players. They think they know the players and how they speak, but then you just totally get it wrong. So then you get into that Steve Buscemi gif where like, greetings, fellow kids, or if you watch, there's that notorious Mighty Number 9 trailer with the narrator's like, hey kids, looking at the screen. Do you like awesome things that are awesome? You gotta check out this game, dude. And I'm like, throwing up in my mouth a little bit. If you could still see dislikes on YouTube, then you would see that's like, 99% dislikes. But that's just like bad research, and also like not knowing where you're coming from, because not every game is different. Developers are different. Something that works for an indie might not work for a AAA company, because like if a AAA developer video tried to be like, I don't know, folksy instead of like corporate, I feel like it might work, but it might come off as like, you're a corporate whatever game person. You're not, intimate indie person. So why are you talking to me this way? You should know your place or something like that. I think that it can be really easy to just come off the wrong way. And especially when you're trying to look cool. Like, oh my god, the worst way you can try to look cool is to try to look cool, as everyone probably knows. But some people are really good. I think that Victoria Tran from Inner Sloth for Among Us, she's, I think, found an amazing way to communicate with the Among Us community, and I've gotten to like piggyback on some of that by making trailers for them, which are just like super upfront. They're one of the trailers we released recently-ish. It was when they released a trailer for their like new monetization thing, where they have like in-game currency now that you can buy with real money and stuff like that. And the trailer is basically like partially acting as the audience questions, partially acting as the voice of Inner Sloth or Among Us. And there's one big title card that just says like, this is just to make money, isn't it? And there's a little asterisk, and the asterisk says, yep. And then it answers, yep, asterisk. And then the asterisk goes down to, we live in a capitalist society. It's just like super upfront and honest, and done in like a funny way because of like the music and the editing and everything. I'm tooting my own horn here. But, trying to resonate with the players, thinking that you're one of them, and just not getting it at all. That's a big problem.
Yeah, and to those points too, it just goes back to what we already discussed before, like really knowing your audience and everything from that perspective, and being clear. Like, you just gave another example on like, and was within the Inner Sloth and messaging and their tone by just being upfront. And so they were being funny, but being very honest too at the same time about, okay, this is why we're really doing it.
Yeah.
And but again, I don't think they would feel comfortable doing that if they didn't know their audience, because that for some people that could totally backfire.
Absolutely. One more example I remembered of like really connecting with the audience. If you haven't seen the trailer for SnowRunner, and specifically the one SnowRunner United We Drive, So this trailer. So if you don't know what SnowRunner is, it's like a very high fidelity game where you're driving big rigs through treacherous terrain. So you're trying to get, I don't know, cargo from, you know, place in Alaska to a different part of Alaska, and there's no roads or something like that. And it's really hard to get through, and it's all like physics based and stuff. So they made this trailer called the SnowRunner United We Drive trailer, which was piggybacking off of the Death Stranding zeitgeist, by basically making a parody trailer of Death Stranding. They used basically the same font. They have the story structure is kind of similar with like the voiceover, and they have credits just like Kojima does in his credits, except the credits are like, you know, Ford Taurus or something like that. And it's parody, but it's also like super earnest. It's about like the voiceover is from the wife of a driver saying like, "Oh baby, I know what you're doing is important, but please get home safe. You know, it's in this time. I love you." And in the comments, there was all these people who were like families of truck drivers, and like, "Oh my God, like this is like my life. You know, my dad's a truck driver, or my mom's a truck driver, or something like that." And like, this is how it feels. And like, I'm doing like the like getting emotional hand gestures. And it's like, wow, like you started as a parody, but you did it so well and was sincere that people connected with it. And I'm like, that's like transcendent, once in a lifetime trailer, I think.
Yeah. And parodies too, those can, like you said, those can be hard or whatever, but again, it comes down to knowing the audience, know what could potentially work and stuff, because you know, anything you do could have, and it's not to be like, you know, be overly worried or am I doing something right. Just do a little bit of research and work to find out if it's in line. I mean, nothing you do is going to be perfect, so but as long as you're going through those steps and measures to do that, then you should be in good shape for the most part, or at least thinking in that direction.
And a lot of it really honestly just comes down to your game's design. Like if you've made a JRPG game that is just like a little bit different than a good Final Fantasy, and like the story is nothing really that grabby, and it would, you know, it still took years of your life to make or something. Obviously you got to focus on the things that are different, but some game designs are just not different enough to really stand out, just because of how they're made, either the art style or the game mechanics, something like that. And that always just destroys me whenever I see this, because I know how hard it is to make games. So I do recommend that people really think about their trailers as soon as possible, like when they're prototyping, because it's very telling when you think, okay, what could we show about our game that in the trailer that makes it look interesting, and is that interesting, like the most interesting version we've had, iteration we have for like this trailer for this game that doesn't exist yet.
You know, that is a really good tip. And as we're getting close to closing now, I was wondering if there's any like other tips that you could recommend for people listening today and about what we discussed.
Yeah, I would say, you know, keep things simple, which simple does not mean easy, to be clear, but simplicity can be the hardest thing possible. But, you know, again, a good way is to just think linearly, think about matching things. If you have a title card that says you can double jump in your game, please make sure your next shot in the trailer is you double jumping. It's just like a really fundamental sort of thing that I think people don't think to do. It seems like obvious when I say it out loud, but it's not, apparently. One thing, especially for story trailers, I tell people to transcribe everything in the trailer that tells a story. So if there's a mix of dialogue and title cards and narration, you know, write it all out on a piece of paper or type it out and just read it out, no visuals, and see, does that make sense? You know, does this tell a story? Does this dialogue connect to the next piece of dialogue, to the next bit of narration, to the next thing? And if it doesn't make sense, then it's not going to make sense when it's being read or listened to or watched by someone. Even big AAA games fall into this territory. If you watch quite a lot of the Final Fantasy remake trailers, which were not made, I think they're probably made in-house, but the best ones are made by my friends at Hammer Creative. They're like, there's such a big difference between the storytelling between the ones made by Hammer versus the ones that I'm pretty sure are from an internal team, because it's just like a mishmash of Final Fantasy story scenes. Because I guess they're like, well, we know people like Final Fantasy. If we just show a bunch of stuff, we'll show the golden saucer scene, then we'll show, I don't know, the playground scene, then we'll show, I don't know, fighting a chocobo. I don't know. Then people will figure it out, which no, they won't. It'll just be chaos, and it doesn't make any sense. So read through your story, make sure your story works without the visuals, and then cut in the visuals accordingly. And then, of course, hire a professional if you can. It's in many ways, it saves you money, because if you hire someone good, then they have those many years of experience. They can do something faster and better than you, because you're just getting started, and you need to work on your game also. So you are losing money because you are doing a job that you are worse at, that takes you longer, and not doing the job that presumably you do better, which is making the game. But I know, of course, some people, they just spend more time, and they're not actually spending on like, because it's like a side project, so not like spending on labor basically. But if you can, at the very least, show your trailer to some people who aren't working on your game and see if they like it. Do a little focus group testing and make it better.
All great and amazing points and tips to follow. I mean, especially that other one, because I know a lot of times, or the more recent one, a lot of times people want to do their own thing. But to your point, yeah, it might be an extra expense or whatever, but a good way to look at it is as actually just an investment, because that investment into that project can actually do more for you long term in terms of getting progress, getting results, working on everything else related to your game, opposed to other things where you may not be as good or just not good, period, at. So, but still, all these are simple and really sum up nicely everything we talked about today. So, Derek, I can't thank you enough for being here. But before we leave, please share with us, like, what are good ways people can reach out to you or learn more about making a game trailer, anything you have to share where people can be part of your community, learn more about what you do, or even contact you. What are the best ways to do that?
Sure. Before that, one last thing I just thought of is, I tell people you should just act like more people will see your trailer than play your game, because that's probably true.
Good point.
So, your parents, if they're not gamers, they're just going to watch your trailer probably. You put the controls in front of them, they'll be like, I don't play games. What do you want me to download? What's Steam? What do you want me to, how do I do this? What's WASD? So,
right.
It's just, I think it's true, because it's top of the funnel marketing. So more people will watch your trailer than play your game. So if that's the only thing that people can see, then make it good. But for ways to reach me, people can go to gametrailereditor.com, which I purposefully registered because it means I don't have to spell it out, because of my name, my first and last name, Derek Lieu, I have to spell it both because people spell Derek in many different ways. And even within my own family, Lieu is spelled multiple different ways.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I spell it Lieu. But on social media, I'm Derek_Lieu. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, where I share tips. I also stream on Twitch. So you can go twitch.tv/Derek Lieu, and also on YouTube, where I'm probably more active as far as putting out stuff. And yeah, my email is just derek-lieu.com/contact. That's not my email, that's my contact form. But yeah, I have like blog posts and my weekly newsletter, which I think gametrailereditor.com will take you there, or eventually you get to the subscribe page. And yeah, I'm wherever I am, I'm talking about trailers, because there's just too much to talk about, and not a lot of people do talk about it. So I feel that I should do that, because I want it out there. I want people to know about trailers, because they're fun.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I know Derek has not just a lot of fun with this, but of course, as he demonstrated today, a lot of experience. And I've actually been at least to the YouTube channel, really high quality stuff there, guys. So it's totally worth everybody just checking it out. You're going to do yourself a service by doing so. So Derek, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. A lot of this information I know is going to help out a lot of people.
Thank you so much. It's a lot of fun.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. If you enjoy and value the show's content, you can support us even more by going to Patreon and visiting www.patreon.com/IGM podcast and select the tier that best suits your needs. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.